Hello, everybody. First of all, you're all a bunch of champs. Thank you for sticking it out today, and I'm glad that I can be here for the final talk of the day. I'd like to share some lessons that I learnt and shared with the team working on the design guide project at the DTO, you might know it as. So let's get going. I'm Petch. I am a product engineer and I work for a design studio called Us2. Product engineer means that I help build products and the systems that deliver the products, and I do that on the web because I like it. I'm from Sydney in Australia, which is not far from here. Melbourne's nice too, I guess. Us2. We call ourselves a digital product studio, which means that we launch products, services, even our own companies. We've got 4 studios around the world, and Sydney's the smallest and the youngest with a baby. We've only got about 30 people, but we've worked with already brands and with startups and now with the government, launching products that have some kind of impact on the world. You might know Us2 by this game, Monument Valley. It came out about 2-ish years ago, and it's been downloaded about 26 million times, which is once for every man, woman and child in Australia, and a few dogs as well. So I started working with the DTA about 6 months ago on their digital style guide project. The DTA was established in 2015, as Mel said, to help government departments and agencies transform their services to make them work better, more gooder. They've got teams in Canberra and in Sydney, and they've grown to about 100 people, maybe? A lot of people doing really great work. Government services, they work on stuff like if you need to book an appointment with the Department of Immigration. That sounds like a simple thing to do. DTA works with the department to make sure that that online service is as simple and as clear as it can be. They've also worked on attendance records for childcare services with the Department of Education and Training. Stuff that touches people's lives on the reg makes a big difference if they work better. So we've got this handy 13-point guide which helps us deliver simpler, clearer and faster digital services. There's a lot of words up there, and it's a wonderful guide to follow while you're delivering projects. But what it boils down to is follow a guide. So we made one. Because the DTO has a philosophy that says deliver quickly, learn, and then iterate. Delivering quickly means that you want to have as little waste as possible in every project, and so that's where a style guide can help. Our team formed to build a CSS framework and piece of documentation to help teams at the DTO get up and running as quickly as possible on their projects. So this is what we came up with. It's screen reader ready. It doesn't look very glamorous, but it's quite small and it's fully WCAG compliant, and it works like almost everywhere, which is hard work. But why build a style guide in the first place? I don't think that all of the government websites should look the same because that would be a bit boring. And I'm not going to try and sell you on the value of building a style guide because a lot has been said about why that's probably a good idea. But what I will talk about is why making a style guide helps us deliver simpler, clearer and faster digital services for government. Government is really complicated. It's a complicated machine. It's big. The Australian federal government has 18 departments and 192 agencies, resulting in thousands and thousands of websites. So you can imagine there's a lot of redundancy in the way that things are built, and a lot of overhead both for citizens that have to interface with government agencies, and of course for the departments that are maintaining these websites. Simply bringing things online doesn't necessarily make them more efficient. Government is for everyone. That's why government exists. So when you're building an online government service, you have an audience size of everybody You've got to make sure it works for everyone, everywhere, which is a bit of a challenge. Go back. There we go. Case study in device support. So it's like responsive is not a new thing anymore. We do it pretty well. We know about connectivity problems. Even though a lot of us sit on a laptop or a nice big screen, things look real nice. We're aware of all of the other devices that people use to access the internet. And of course, that means we're presented with accessibility problems, or opportunities, shall I say. People have different levels of connectivity. They've got different types of attention when they're interfacing with your online service. So we can be real good developers, and we can make sure that we've got all these use cases covered off. But what about when someone looks at your website with a Nintendo Wii? Because that happens. 5,000 sessions on the ATO website last year via a Nintendo Wii. So, cool, good on that. And of course that doesn't mean that we're now just building websites for the Nintendo Wii, because that would be a bit weird. But it's a nice reminder that sometimes people are using devices that you wouldn't expect, and it's not always out of choice too. People have older Android devices that maybe can't be upgraded. And if something works on the Wii, it's probably going to work on any new device that comes out too. So you've really got to broaden your scope of thinking and think about the user, not about the device. So I'm going to talk about some do's and don'ts. The design guide project, I was working on it for about 6 months, and we went from we probably need a design guide to working software over that period of time. But of course it had its unique challenges, and we learnt some lessons, so I'm going to try and share some of them with you. Number one, don't work in a bubble. The number one thing that I took away from working on this project was that design systems take a lot of people to build. And even though our team had research capability, design capability, development, we were in no position at all to tell the whole of the organisation how and in what style they should build their interfaces. What we needed to do was constantly be in touch with all of the other teams, find out what they were building, what worked for them and what didn't, and make sure that we were friendly and happy and try and be a bit funny in the change logs, and make sure that people always feel happy to come to you. You've got to be flexible. Like, we had a remote team the entire time, so we did most of our hangouts on Slack, and we would just work wherever we could find a Wi-Fi. So don't work in a bubble, collaborate. Do test early and test often. That's my life motto. I've got a picture up here of our very early workshopping session where we defined the MVP of what this design guide would look like. And so that, given that that was our first deliverable, what we initially had to do was define what that product would look like, what's in it, who are the people that are going to use it, and what do we think we know about what they need to get out of our product. So by the time we made our first release a couple of weeks in, we already had something ready to test with a set of hypotheses and challenge our assumptions about the product. As an example, we assumed that the best model to deliver a CSS framework was a little snippet of CSS, a little snippet of markup, a bit of information about how to do it right. Turns out, a lot of the developers don't have control over the markup that they're putting into screens. Maybe the markup is coming from another back-end system. How do we accommodate that? We've got the tools and the smarts to do it. Of course, we were not just testing with users, but we were testing the code itself. So we always made sure that that we had any automated tests we possibly could for accessibility. We'd check on things like our file size. You'll notice that I haven't actually talked about any CSS yet. But now we do the extend thing, or don't, as the case may be. Result of some of our testing, turns out we've ended up with a real big style sheet. It's not so great for performance, just a bad idea generally. We found out that extend was not working in our favor, decided not to use it. And that's okay, that's a decision that we made as a team, and that's a lesson that we learnt. But because we had these tests in place, we were able to figure out really quickly that something was going wrong, fix it, and get on with our lives. Of course, that started to raise questions about our architecture too. Do we need conventions to stop us from implementing anti-patterns? Maybe. Architecture as you go. When we started out, we didn't know what the design system would look like. We were developing a design system and also coding a framework to deliver it. So what that meant was we had to decide one piece at a time what the structure would be. And so the first piece was typography. You know, what does a heading look like? What fonts are we using? What is our line spacing? And so on and so forth. And as each time we added a new piece, we say, well, how does it fit? And how does it change the things that we've already got in place? So it was nice and lean. We had enough structure to inform the rest of the teams, but nothing that would ever constrain us. The key was flexibility. So you can see we started out with just a partial for a whole bunch of things that you might find on a page. And then as we go on, we started to get a little bit more serious about, oh, well, maybe this is a component and this is a utility. Of course, that means that we can manage the dependencies within our imports a lot more easily. But we only added that complexity as it was required. Everything that you produce at the DTA is open source because it's a really nice way to work, having your code out in the open. And I know what an open source project is, I think. That means that you've got an open repo, means you've got contributing guidelines, you've got a really nice README, probably got some templates in your pull requests and your issues. So that was all going great until we realized that we actually didn't have the time or the capability to deal with feature requests that came in. So even though we were deciding for weeks on end that, oh yeah, it's okay, if another team develops a feature, they test it and they bring it back to us, we'll just slot that right back in. Unfortunately, we had a crisis of confidence. We didn't know, is this the button that we want for everyone? We had to define our own product and our own roadmap before we knew what we could fold back in. So I think the effort of implementing a community, or rather managing a community of open source contributors, means that you have to have a really, really strong belief in what you're building and where you want it to go. Unfortunately, we ended up with pull requests that would just sit open for weeks and weeks and eventually months, which is just horrific, because we couldn't have the confidence in our own product to make a call on whether this thing should be in or out. Maybe someone should have just merged it, I don't know. Ali this morning, she said that having good markup means that your page, your document, has meaning without any styles at all. And that was a philosophy that we followed on this project from the very beginning. So when we came to look at things in, you know, IE7 and IE6, because it's government and people still use IE6 and IE7. Actually, no, I think we ruled out IE6. Yeah, I think we did. But IE7, still there, still a lot of that. And the best way that we could deliver quick value to those older browsers was just by ripping out the style sheets completely. And because we had a well-structured document, every component that we added to this style guide had guidance on which what are they called again? Tags, elements? HTML, how does it work? I don't know. We gave guidance about what the semantic meaning of each of those elements are. Do you have to apply a role to it or any extra attributes to give it more meaning? Yes or no? Of course, no style sheets is not really a solution that's going to cut it, because the internet would just look like 1998 if it did. So once we focused our efforts on producing styles as enhancement instead of working on fallback, we found that we could provide a better experience for less capable browsers and also give all of the sugar to new ones. So, how did we do it? It's a real minefield out there, and now we get to write the actual code. Code comments plus gulp is a style guide, basically. Because we wanted to deliver the first iteration of this style guide so quickly, and we wanted it to be a living style guide, we said, all right, we don't want to be developing two products. We don't want to develop a CSS framework over here and then develop a guide over here. Let's join them. And so did a bit of Googling, found this thing called KSS, which is a syntax for CSS comments. And then thanks to a nifty little node generator that runs on a gulp task, we take all of the comments out of our CSS and build them into a static site, which was real cool. So the comments Oh, that's terrible contrast. Probably not AA compliant. So in our buttons partial, we used Sass, by the way, because it's pretty handy. In our buttons partial, above all of the styles that describe what a button should look like, we have a comment block, and it says, creating buttons. We've got some markdown content there. We've got a link to an HTML, or rather a path to an HTML file that contains the markup that matches these styles. And then we say, where in the style guide does it live? It lives in the buttons section. And once we pass it through the sausage machine, we get a page on the style guide called buttons. There's a section there called creating buttons. And then all of our content is there, all of the different types of buttons you can have. It's wild. And then your markup sample there. And there's a link back to GitHub so that you can raise an issue or dig through the code or whatever you fancy. So that got us up and running really, really quickly. And it meant that any time we were editing styles, we were editing the documentation and therefore updating the guide. And as the project went on, we found that that had its limitations because we couldn't just make a page like you would expect to be able to do on a website. So when it came time, we swapped out our Node KSS builder for a Jekyll build. But we had the same principle. We took all of those comments out of our CSS into a data object, put them through a different sausage machine, and spat out a Jekyll static site at the end. Same principle, worked really well. This is the digital marketplace website, which was one of the first adopters of the digital style guide. They went from 0 to beta in, I think, 2 months, less than 3 months for show. And they were really key, this team, in bringing new features back into the UI kit and also helping us test out the features that we put in. So what we ended up with was a tool that helped teams at the DTA deliver really, really quick prototypes instead of having to design, test a new login pattern every time you launch a new project. You can go to the design guide and say, what does a login screen look like? The marketplace and other projects were able to launch incredibly quickly and not have to worry about their browser testing or their accessibility testing. They knew that they had a baseline of support. And the new DTA website, which was just launched last week, there was a name change, get a new website. That was built in just 2 weeks. It was transitioned over to the new styles that we had in the guide, and it took a minimum of fuss, which was really nice. So the guide itself is up on GitHub, and I invite you all to please go and have a look. If you'd like to see how difficult open source is, please have a look through the issues that you'll find on there. We've got about 12 releases, and we tried to work really, really hard to make sure that our thinking and our working was shown in our changelogs as we went along. So I invite you to please go and have a look. And that's all from me. Danke, Wale.